Felipe, we are live, man.
Adam, man, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited to be here with you.
It's my pleasure. I get all jazzed up about my countdown, man. I'm telling you, it's the little things in life. So,
Yeah, the music is good. I was getting all excited. I was feeling the anticipation. I'm like, let's go. I'm ready.
usually I'm like, nice. I went back to see our first one, and this is now episode, I think, 25. Uh, really psyched. My brother and I, Matt, who I was introduced through Matt to you eventually on LinkedIn. We just said, hey, let's do 10 of these, and we started on our mom's birthday on May 25th, and uh, I was challenging myself, and he was challenging me to find something to do consistently every week. And I will tell you, that deserves its own topic and its own show on the benefits of that. Um, and because I realized that I was not as consistent in my scheduling. I had a pretty good cadence and routines and things like that, of course, but something new. It was really fun to commit to something new and make that happen. So we've done it now 25 weeks, and shout out to my bro Matt Zimbrowski with Agile Game Changers. Shout out to LinkedIn Live. It has been a very rewarding experience. I'll also say hello to my friend John Cardonia, who could not make it today. He's who you and I were just talking, Felipe, about. He's my building engineer, procurement, vendor relations expert, and pricing and bidding. Just a great guy, and he's been on our show numerous times. And um, we are talking with Felipe, engineer Manriquez. And Felipe and I just met, right, several weeks ago on LinkedIn. Uh, my brother Matt and I had an episode about 10 weeks ago where we called it "The Worlds Colliding," and we were talking about my call it expert area of hotel operations and development and acquisitions and asset management, hospitality, restaurants, and such. And then he comes from the world of agile leadership, agile management, Scrum, software engineering. Um, and you were kind of right there in the middle where I think Matt just sent me a text to say, hey, I just connected with Felipe. Um, we should have him on our show, or we should connect. And then you and I had a conversation, and I was just really jazzed up about it. So, man, welcome. Maybe you want to do the little annoying 15 or 20-second introduction to say who is Felipe and what the
Oh,
heck are we doing here?
I need more than 20 seconds.
Mhm.
I love talking. So people that know me, if you're new to me on catching me on Adam's show, hi, I'm Felipe Engineer Manriquez. I'm the host of the EBFC show, the Easier, Better for Construction podcast. We're about to hit year 5 of podcasting, and I'm proud to say that almost 300 plus videos uploaded to YouTube, and we're turning the corner on 100 podcast episodes. And my show is all about the construction industry, where I bring on guests from in and around the show. And it started, Adam, because of the pandemic, and I just lost the ability to go speak at conferences. So a friend of mine had been pressuring me forever. Thank you, Brittany, for making me get started, make the show. She had a podcast, a constructor podcast, and she's like, you need to get your own thing going because people like talking to you and you like to talk. I was like, oh, I do like to talk. And so, yeah, I work for a general contractor, the Bolt Company. You can see the logo right over my shoulder. We're a large general contractor. We do a lot of commercial, industrial construction across the United States. And I work in a very unique role as project delivery services director. That's my J job. And then at night, I'm podcasting, video editing, doing social media. I just found out that apparently I'm some kind of LinkedIn influencer, Adam, with when you get over 20,000 views to 35,000 views per week. I think that means that I think I should be getting paid by LinkedIn, but so far I'm paying them. I don't know how that relationship works. So
That's kind of nice, you know. I'm about 19,500 short of that, so I'm working towards it, man.
there you go. Yeah, and they just awarded me the Top Voices podcast or Top Voices Communications badge because I've been contributing to some of their articles, and they DM me and
Yeah.
send emails now, which is pretty funny.
It's a, you called it the easier, better, and then what's the F for construction?
That's right. For construction.
For construction, okay.
The
Nice.
easier, better for construction podcast. Yeah, I bring on guests from in and around the industry to talk about how they're making work easier and better for folks. And I've had some software companies come on. I've had owners. I've had some trade contractor, subcontractors, engineers. I even had a comedian come on in season one, which was interesting. He now specializes in suicide prevention, and so that was like I think he's the most outside tangential person. Then I had later, I think a year later, I had someone talking about mental health because that's a big topic for us in our industry, mental health, and super
Yep.
important to me as well. So that, yeah, I've had lots of guests come on and share. I just had somebody on my show that's got Corey Fisk. She's got 20 plus thousand followers on LinkedIn, so, like, I'm just a child compared to, like, the following that she has. But, like, a lot of people come on, and sometimes I've had Adam people come on with, like, 90 followers, right? But they've got a really good story of what they're doing, and I'd love to have them come on and just talk about what their work is, and sometimes I
I
get
think, I've been inviting, we've had a couple, I've recorded some anyway. I don't know if we've published any, but, even high school students and college students that are, starting to engage LinkedIn, for example, and like they just think it's the older person's thing. But then when they get engaged, they might have 2 or 3 followers, and um, it's the best comment that I got from a young friend of mine. He said it's like a living resume, and I
Mm.
said you're right. That's exactly what it is. You can track your resume and connect and build your own network, and it's quite amazing. I've embraced it for many years, and it's very good. You mentioned mental health. You mentioned a comedian. Those two are connectors in my industry also as a way to. It's a tangential. Also, but at the same time, humor and helps with mental health. Working in hotels every day. And particularly restaurants. There is a concern in restaurants and restaurant management, chefs, kitchen managers, with we'll just say mental health. But the conversation, I do like that it's getting louder and more frequent. In that those high stress hospitality jobs, we'll call them, are also not always stable, especially during the and after the pandemic. And so, high stress, unstable income producing opportunities create more stress and anxiety and mental health, which could lead to self medicating and things like that. And in the construction industry, I have a previous episode. What I am very enthused and inspired by. We did an episode about employee-owned companies, and Hospiamo, we aspire to become 100% employee-owned and exit in that way, um, and also to help other hospitality companies and medium to large employers, even small employers, become employee-owned or create some sort of employee ownership program or profit sharing program because um, it really is the seed of retention in our industry, which retention and high turnover has gotten even worse than what it has been. And so, what I found was that the hospitality industry, um, although being one of the largest employers, including tourism, and we'll call it accommodations and food service and tourism, only hold less than 1% share of the employee-owned companies in the United States, but yet construction grew from 1% share about 25 years ago, and it's now represents, I think it's like 18 or 20% of all employee-owned companies are construction related, and I am really excited about that because I have some friends, and I mentioned them. One of them was Choate Construction here in the Southeast. They're Got many friends that work there. They're a great organization, and they went employee owned. Um, I want to say 5 to 7 years ago, and it was a decision that they made. So when we talk about construction, and when you talk about construction, um, and you're also having maybe an agile mindset, right? Because you use different processes to make things go more efficiently. Um, the Let's put the people side, people topic aside for a moment, related to like employee ownership.
Mhm,
But when you've got a, I'm curious, when you say easier and better with technology and innovation, um, what is the newest best thing that you've been maybe learned about over the past 5 years or so, that you're
oh,
using in the
oh, wonderful.
construction world?
Yeah,
Is there
wonderful.
anything?
There's something for sure. Let's call it ChatGPT, OpenAI, artificial intelligence. I mean, and that's one company, one brand. OpenAI is the brand, but in this last year, and I just watched the OpenAI keynote developers conference this week, and again, I'm electrical engineer is my training. Been working in project management for over 20 years in construction, and then I adopted Agile and Scrum in particular over a decade ago, and now I teach Scrum to people in the construction industry as well. And the biggest disruptor that we've got hitting the industry right now is artificial intelligence and a wave of software technology hitting construction like never before at an unprecedented speed. And I mean, when I first started, I'm so old, Adam, that when I first started in construction, we were using paper and a light table to do coordination. So you'd have like your base level drawings, and then you put one sheet on top and manually look for clashes in the sheet where things didn't work in the design and try to coordinate issues in two dimensional with a light lighting up the page below so you can see the clashes. And now we've and that was even when building information modeling already existed, but it wasn't widely adopted. It came out in the early 90s, and it had virtually zero effect on construction productivity. And there's so many people. I've got friends that are like really deep into BIM, building information modeling, and
Yep.
they think it's like so important and it's like so widespread, but the data doesn't support it. The data just does not support the impact it has. Not. I know from real experiences that when you coordinate and plan in model space, you can get massive amounts of benefits, and you can absolutely save millions of dollars. So if you're an owner and you're procuring projects and you're not requiring BIM from your contractors, you are spending money unnecessarily. And so the easier and better, like you're keeping me to technology focus on your question, and I appreciate that, but it's also process too. And so that's where I want to say, like, we have a tech that can give you like this whiz bang instantaneous ROI on the first project you use it. However, there's a learning curve. And if you have a bad process, it doesn't matter what kind of technology you're going to have, your process will spill into the tech. And there's a lot of tech companies that
Mhm.
create technology solutions, and the processes that they're basing it on are they're the bad process, sub-optimized process, and it just proliferates with the tech. So you just do the wrong thing faster. And so that's
Yeah,
like,
there's a lot of that.
yeah,
When
and
you
you
say process, what do you, do you use, I guess, Scrum as your go-to process, or is there another process that you,
so
have
when I say
jumped in?
process, being like super agnostic, I just mean the steps you take to get done what you're trying to do. It could be
Okay.
a Scrum process, it could be a traditional process, could have nothing to do with agile. It's just like it could be you could be in a heavily regulated environment and you've got to follow governmental regulations and laws to get from A to B. And so you could be in a very sub-optimized process. So whatever the process is, Scrum is a I think of Scrum like as a framework to get things done. And I mean, I could talk about Scrum for days, Adam. So be careful what you ask me because
I know, and
I
I
will
can learn about Scrum for days.
yeah,
My brother is, um, talked to me a lot about that, and he told me that I had a Scrum and Agile mentality without even knowing it, and I described all the people that I like working with, and he said, "Oh, yeah, they have an Agile mindset, but it's a methodology that you need to actually learn."
yeah. So real
A
basic for people that don't know, if like you're watching this, you're just like, what are they talking about? Agile, like Agile is a it's become like agile with the capital A, not the lowercase a. The lowercase a means exactly what you think it is if English is your primary language. But with the uppercase A, capital A, it describes a management framework that involves four values that were developed in 2001 in Snowbird, Utah, and then 12 principles. And it was developed by a number of individuals. One of my mentors, Jeff Sutherland, being one of them. And they decided that they came together because software development was so bad, so horrible, so horrific. It was slave-like conditions. I can't use any nicer words to describe what people were going through in the 80s through the 90s with software development. It was just so terrible. It was just dreadful, dreadful. And these individuals came together and they said, there's got to be a better way. And so at the time, Scrum was already around since like the early 90s, and the extreme programming was also a little bit more mature as well. And so Scrum and extreme programming were the two big forces, and then the other thought leaders from industry made contributions, but they came up with a set of values and principles. And so if you have an agile mindset, like you have a learning mindset. So to be like just plain English, like you learn, you do something, you try something, you see if it works, doesn't work, and then you adapt. So if you're adapting based on what you learn, you have an agile mindset. It's that simple. People try to overcomplicate the snot out of it, Adam, because consultants get paid by the dollar, as you and I sometimes do. Sometimes we are those people do. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to be concise and simple
No,
language. I
it's
think,
very helpful.
yeah,
I
and then
think of, you reminded me of, Moneyball,
yeah,
the book, and I'm a big fan of the book and big fan of baseball, and also the movie is very good. But he says, "Adapt or die," right? And so he was, when Brad Pitt was saying that as the owner of the A's or the general manager of the A's, he was, in a way doing what I do sometimes, which is I'm trying to convince myself that I need to adapt or die rather than trying to convince somebody else, because if they don't, you can't really convince somebody to do that. And so making a choice to learn and adapt is something that does take years to kind of understand but also embrace. So
and I love what
um
you said right there, Adam. That you said you can't force people to change. And that is so true. I was getting text messages literally today. It's now, early in the morning on Thursday, but 0 dark 30, somebody in a different time zone was texting me about some people that they wanted to change. And I replied back to them with this old Chinese proverb that says, you can't tell your neighbor to sweep the snow off of their stoop until you clean the snow off of your stoop first. And I told the person, I said, what this means in this context without attacking him. I said, most people, like he was describing a very particular thing about ego and people just being problematic. But I know who he is too, right? So I know like this is not right. Let's not. Another proverb that you might recognize more is like, don't throw stones when you live in a glass house. And so,
yes.
like, when you come across people you're having issue with, more often, 10 out of 10 times, it's not them, it's you. And so I just told them, like, take the stance of if somebody is displaying what you would classify as an ego problem or thing that you think they need to change, actually, it's you need to change. You need to change how you're reacting to them first. And so I just gave them some pointers on, like, to have a conversation with them where you're actually curious to understand why are they saying what they're saying. You're going to find out, like I said, 10 out of 10 times their intentions are good, their delivery might be bad, and you might be perceiving the delivery bad, but you're not in the direct he's not in the direct line of what they're doing. So it's like it's not even a real problem for him. Like it's one of those, and people do this all the time, Adam. Like they think they see a problem, but it's not a problem. It's like they're seeing an observation, but like what they're observing is working to some degree. And if they don't have any influence over what's happening, keep walking. That's why I tell people, just keep walking. Don't don't tell people that they're not doing well. Don't make people feel bad. That's disrespect for people. That's not what we want to do. So if it is in your control and you can influence the process, then that's a different conversation. And then you can engage with those people and change the process, give them some feedback so that they can see at a key point. Like if you're let's say you're in a 5-step process, like I think, if we use the hospitality as an example, and if I'm managing staff and I've got a process for hiring, or not hiring, but staffing people at key times to keep my shifts open, in my restaurant or in my front desk, right? I already have a process, and it's probably something really basic. It's probably like a piece of paper with people's names on it, right? And all you're doing is filling the white boxes, the empty boxes with somebody. As long as you've got somebody filled in, and you're not making somebody work, multiple times in a day, because there's certain rules you follow in your process, because people have to they got to not be at work to be at work sometimes, right? Then that's like a nice visual, easy step. Like you can just step back and see, like, oh, okay, I've got 10 people available. I've got 7 slots. I can use some rules with seniority to put people in the slots. And then I could ask people, hey, feedback, does this work for your schedule? Or somebody's got like an issue on Saturday, they can't do Saturdays, right? Then you just have some simple rules and optimize that process. But that type of really basic process is really ideal. And then people they'll complicate stuff like in construction, because it's now you got all these moving parts and pieces. But if you step back and just look at, what are the processes to do this specific task, then you can optimize and shorten the time down. Because we spend way too much money. I'm going to throw a stat on you, Adam, because you gave some ESOP stats. And Bolt is an employee-owned company. They recently became employee-owned in less than 8 years ago, I believe. I've been there 2 years now and counting, and I think I'm 4 years away from being vested to get my full stock earning potential. But I've worked for a couple other ESOP companies, and I do know quite a bit. But on this process side, like thinking back a construction spend, and research has done this in multiple industries, including the hospitality construction area. Somewhere between 60 cents to 80 cents of every dollar spent is non-value add from the perspective of the customer. So for you listening, that means for every dollar you spend, you're only getting 20 cents of value, which is terrible. It's terrible. It's like real bad. So there's a huge potential, like the opportunity to
It's
make things,
massive.
yeah, easier, better, and faster is like super easy. So like if you're a client and you're watching the show, that means if you build 10 projects in a year, that means like if you could tune up that waste thing down and be more valuable, you could build 15 projects for the same money. Like you could get 5 projects for free if you can reduce the waste and what you're spending. So like if I'm building
You know
hotels, like just think about that, Adam. Like if I had
yeah.
10 hotels in my portfolio and suddenly I could get 15 hotels for the price of 10, what kind of ROI am I going to have for my shareholders? It's incredible.
It is incredible. You mentioned something that I didn't wanna, let go, but you give a lot of good nuggets. I like that. You gotta come on here more often. I like your nuggets. One is you mentioned to seek to understand, somebody or whatever they're telling you, or a process, and if that is done in the framework of before the meeting or, conversation even starts, like, a micro example is in that 10 hotels example, right? If those hotels are all, say, making $100 million in revenue and, say, $20 million in pure profit, um, then that's and they look at adding another hotel, they're going to use probably that similar framework to say, or the similar budgeting and margins to say, oh, let's pick our best performer out of the 10, and let's go find another one, and that'll be our 11th, and then we'll do it again, and maybe we want to build our own, and we want to use that uh, role model type hotel as a way to do that. Now, as they're looking into the future, I always recommend to my clients and partners and such to look and try to seek to understand the context and the nuances that are producing your certain level of profitability or revenue optimization techniques at your worst and at your all of your hotels, and put some sort of mindset to it to learn, and then to consider adapting something that really hasn't existed before for them. We do that a lot in our industry, where we just assume. I did that for many years. I just assumed that I was smart, I was experienced, and when I walked into a property, I would, in my own mind, I would be able to see it, and say, "Oh, I know exactly what to do." Right? I would meet with the people, I would look at the building, I would look at the physical, I would look at the market and the financials, and but I had we talked about this on a previous episode. I had I was in Boone, North Carolina, and I'll give another shout out to Boone. I love saying hello to them. In Watauga County, North Carolina. Whoop, whoop.
No,
Um,
yeah, just giving the love to Watauga County. There you go.
that's right. That's right. Thanks, man. I got to talk to you about that heart for a minute. So, well, I was up there, and I will tell you that the first month of me being exposed and engaged into this project was a massive learning experience for me because I did go in thinking I knew what to do. I knew the process. I identified whatever problems that existed and created a potential solution and many different options and gathered the people together, and it was ready to go. And then the first 30, 45 days was me thinking to myself and then eventually telling people I was completely wrong about this, about this, about this, and that. So let's go back and, like you said, let's reflect and take a look at what this situation is rather than saying, I know I'm right. I'm going to keep on being pigheaded and go forward. But I learned so much at that project. And uh, those people that most of the people that I was affiliated with, now that the project's been done for about a year and a half or so, a couple years, I still kept in touch with the most of the people that I was working with because they were the ones that were teaching me. And I went through what you were just describing as making sure that my own snow off of my step was cleared off before I started saying to others that that's what you should be doing or whichever. So I appreciate you mentioning all that. Uh, the and also appreciate you mentioning your company Bolt. Can I give them a shout out for being employee owned? BOLDT, like you do behind your shoulder there. So
ULDT, Tom Bolt. He's a good. I consider Tom a friend. He's still, I
that's
think,
great.
it's fourth or fifth generation. I'm just going to say he's fifth generation. Like, and Tom, if you're watching this or anybody, and I'm wrong, it's too late. It's live. So I'm just going to say it's fifth generation. Family started company. He's from the fifth. His dad, Oscar Bolt, passed away some years ago, and Tom has taken over. And then now the company's grown. It's grown quite a bit from its small little roots as a cabinet making company in Wisconsin. They're still headquartered in Appleton, Wisconsin, and now they're spread all over the United States. With, I think we fluctuate in how many people we have working for us, but we're about 3,000 strong any given time of the year. So not small, but we consider it like a medium sized general contracting company.
That's good. I'm sure that we can potentially look at doing some business together because one, whenever I am in Wisconsin, it's the state where they see a name like Zembruski and they're like, "Hey, brother, how you doing?" It's like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm coming home with all my the SKIs on the last of their name. And it's a great place to be. And we have some actually have some partners up there, and from Green Bay onward down to Madison and
Yeah.
over there. So, but you're in California, right?
Yeah. I'm in
Um,
California. I'm just outside of Sacramento, and that's, I'm calling in from the podcast headquarters here, and this is the studio, for for my show as well, and I do a lot of, like, business meetings from here as well, but, most of the times, like, the first time we talked on the phone, I was driving from Sacramento to the Bay Area, down to San Francisco, Walnut Creek area, and, I'm almost always traveling. So, like, that's the life I have as a project delivery services director. I have to go to where the projects are, and none of the projects are in the town where I live, and so I have to drive everywhere. I think the closest job to me is about 40 minutes away. Uh, I didn't pick a place where there's tons of projects. So location, like people in the hospitality industry know, is super important. But I do love the town I live in, and my family. We love it here. It's really nice, and I'm 30 minutes from the airport, and that airport gets me to everything.
That's great. So that I don't forget, you're the EBFC show. Where can people find? I'm sure it's on there like every platform, but I've seen you on YouTube. I've watched you on YouTube. I've watched you on LinkedIn. What's the best way to find your show, Felipe?
Yeah, the best way is to go to theebfcshow.com. So it's THEEBFCSHOW.com. Or you can go to thefelipe.bio.link. And that link, thefelipe.bio.link, has all of my social media accounts and handles on it. Yeah, thank you, Adam, for pumping the show. Yep, that's the website. It's
After 25 episodes, I just recently learned how to do that.
hey,
Nice. Okay.
today's always a good day for innovation. So that's perfect. Yeah, that's the you can find me there, and then on that show, you can click about, and then all of my social media links are there as well. So you'll get to all my content, like follow me on LinkedIn, direct message me. There's a way. So I like this too, Adam. On the podcast website, you can leave me a voicemail message. So there's a big microphone on the landing page on the bottom right corner. Click the blue microphone and leave me a voicemail message, and I will incorporate it into a future show if you do that. So if you're listening and you want to get on my podcast, I will bring your message in, and I'll answer your question live. Well, it won't be live. It's 'cause my shows are
Love
pre-recorded.
that.
Yeah.
I love that. I have not been. I want to learn from that. So maybe I'll call into your show and leave you a message, see how that works. Because we do have some people that I call regular guests, but um, we invite on we got about 16 or 20 or so people that are part of our network that we invite on, and that's growing, including yourself, right? And so
Yeah.
um, where we talk about different topics, and I'll give them the link to say, hey, if you want to come on the show, come on. It's just clunky, you know what I mean? Rather than doing something like that, where that's cool. That's a great learning. I'm going to learn about that.
Yeah,
So
that's,
let me ask you. Let me throw out a scenario to you,
throw it out
Felipe.
there.
Um, all right. So when I mentioned my network, right, it's with Hospiamo. It's we have a network of people that are um, socially capital rich. Okay. And so we know a lot of people. We're the type of people that if somebody did want to go build a hotel in Sacramento,
Yeah,
um, and we are the people that you should call to be like, hey, what management company should you partner with? Where's the best location? You know, like because we have boots on the ground throughout the United States, and if it's not us personally, we know someone to call and they answer, or we have someone by way of text and they answer, right? So it's not that we know everything, but we are very connected to a web of people that can answer questions and get people connected pretty easily. So, but being socially capital rich doesn't necessarily mean that we are financially capital rich, right? So, um, uh, and then you add into that soup being knowledgeable about the hotel industry, being wherever we might be in the world, and to drive by or to here's an example that I want to throw out at you.
okay,
I mentioned John Cardonia. Let's say John Cardonia and I are driving up in Boone, to mention them again, North Carolina, and we see a site, and John says to me, that would be a great site for a new hotel. And he goes through the reasons why for what he sees as a great site. And then we have a conversation, and we already have, say, a concept in mind. And let's say it's a music recording and a podcast recording hotel where that's what happens at this hotel, you know?
yeah, I
So
wanna stay there. I'm sign me up. I wanna go.
yeah, you'd be our first regular guest, man. Or you're going to build it anyway. So, and that's what I'm going to ask you. So, if we have a site in mind, and I will say that this is an example of a microcosm of many people in the United States that work at hotels. There's about 60,000 hotels in the United States. So, each one has about 4 or 5 managers at it. Each hotel does on the average about 3.5 or $4 million a year in total revenue, and about 25 to 35 employees per hotel. So that's the the scope of it. So that's a lot of people that know markets, that know guest traveler. They know the guest path. They are inside the mind of the customer and the guest. They know what they want, right? Um, if they in that example, me and John driving by, when you were going through the technology and the process piece of say constructing and designing in the hotel, and let's say that we know an architect and we say, hey, let's design a 100-room hotel on this site. You doing what you do in the construction world, right, and making things easier and better. um the What should the next step be? What kind of questions might we want to ask somebody like you? Like if we were calling and say, "Hey, I got this great site. I got a little bit of money together. I got a capital partner, but we have this gap of understanding what to do with construction."
That's a great question. The first thing we do is understand your business case. So a lot of it, what you said out loud is like, you and John, you said John, right?
John, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
you and John drive by, you see a site, you start talking about this idea of like what it could be. All the things you're talking about in dialogue are the elements of a business case. You can get as formal or as informal as you want. Doesn't matter. Now, when you call me, what I can help you do, I'm gonna ask you questions to validate your case. And so I'm gonna give you a recipe that you can use forever with all of your clients. Can we build this podcast hospital for this amount of money, your budget, by this and open it by this date? So the formula is like what you're building, how much you want to spend, and when you want it to be operational. So it's the what, the how much, and the when. Now, once you can articulate it in those basic terms, then we can decide in our experience, like that we have as builders, like, does it make sense for the concept to possibly modularize your hotel where we build it like in a factory like conditions and then assemble it on your site with some site preparation and have it standing like in 2 weeks, like an extreme example. Like,
Let's diverge and talk about that because that's something that a lot of
I know
us.
you want to get there. We'll come back to that, but that's one option. So like,
Yeah.
you tell me your business case. In my mind, I'm looking at a menu, like at a restaurant, and I see like all these different foods. And so for you, I'm looking. There's all these different ways we can build and solve that problem for you to get that building up and running. And when you're telling me what your business case is, I'm taking things off the menu. It's like you telling me I don't like chicken, so boom, all the chicken dishes vanish. And then you tell me, I ask you another question about the timing wise, and then I'm just eliminating things from the menu so that we can have a conversation about what you want that's going to solve the problem best for you, because there are almost an infinite number of ways to build buildings today. And sometimes, unfortunately, some projects try to use the infinite number of ways, and that's not good. You want to limit those things. So the next thing we'll focus on in this process that I'm describing, Adam, is called validation. So I'm just following a set of processes that we call a validation process, where I'm just validating your business case, which is that basic formula I gave you. And if we, as we're going to answer those questions, we might need to have a meeting with the designer. And what I'm going to do as an expert, and this is where everybody in your industry probably doesn't know to do this, I'm going to actually prevent your designer from designing. We're going to keep things conversational as long as possible and only let them draw and spend labor hours outside of meetings where we're just finding out information. But when they go to actually draw things, we're gonna prevent drawing until the last responsible moment. We're gonna prevent engineering until the last responsible moment. So like if you've got some like some land acquisition issues or some easement issues, like it does us no good to create a design and then there's an easement that cuts through your property that we didn't account for. Now the designer has to redesign everything. Guess who pays for that, Adam? Your client. So if we just don't let the architect and the design team design until we understand what the easement issues are first, so to have access to what is the actual plot of land that we're going to build this hotel on. Because if they have to redraw anything, it's not for free. The client always pays. And so I'm creating a process where we only let subsequent work happen at the right time. And in validation, there's a lot of things we can do at a conversation level, very low tech, with like basic meeting minutes almost. Or like in a visual way, we could get more lean if the client's up to it. Like we can capture these things like on one piece pages, one piece pieces of paper called A3s or 11 by 17. We can capture a lot of these ideas, or even like in a digital whiteboard, like a mural or a Miro, or something equivalent. And as long as you can capture, or put it on a conference room table. Like if maybe we make a really crude model with cardboard milk cartons or something, and like little trees or Lego pieces, just so that we can visually see what we think. We're taking what's in our mind and we're making it visual so we can react to it and then understand it. And this is something that some of the greatest architects in the world do. They make models of stuff or make things visual so that they can react and talk to clients and understand the space in an approximate reality. And there's even now with modeling, to bring in some tech. At some point, it might make sense that in a day's worth of work, we can model very rapidly, like a rudimentary model. It won't look exactly with the right textures and stuff, but it could be pretty close, and it can be done in a day. So in one day, we can take at the right time, model something. Again, we're not letting the architect like do things for like code or details and things that take them lots of time to do. We're just doing like a, hey, it's not a rectangle box, it's a spherical thing, or it's a, and just broad strokes or sketches. Like, and sketches are totally fine too. Like if you have an architect in the team and they can sketch something pretty well, and hand drawn sketches are the best. And so we're not doing detailed design in validation, but we're getting a high level and we're crystallizing the vision of what you and John think this thing needs to be. And then after we crystallize the vision, I will enter in a process of cost modeling so I can take what that vision is. And again, this only takes me like a day. Maybe it takes, if I was asking an estimator, they'll automatically tell you they need 2 weeks. No, you don't. You can do this in a day. In one day, we can create a cost model and say, okay, here's your budget at this level. And then we're just going to break down, like, here's the land acquisition, here's the building, here's the design cost. And we kind of get some big buckets, and we break down your budget, and then we just validate, like, hey, oh, there's a utility we get an account for. And so, like, here's this utility cost, and it might make your budget go up or down, right? But now you and your client now have the vision captured whatever way you want. You have a cost model, and this can be done like on a whiteboard. You can just have some whiteboard lines, or you can do it in like a spreadsheet type of program, like a Google Sheet or Microsoft Excel or something else, or a database or a smart sheet, depending on the savviness of the client. There's even database type of software that does cost modeling. And I'm not going to name any of the big brands just on purpose, because I'm trying to tell you that it should be super simple. Like if you can't explain it, like looking at your checkbook, you've overcomplicated it. These things are really simple. And the process I'm describing, we've done this on multi-billion-dollar projects. And the more crystal you get in this process, and again, this is a process that makes it easier, then you can bring in technology to supplement that. Now, so now, if your hotel is going to be like this one hotel in Boone is super easy. We can do now. If you're going to scale this concept and go like around the world, now we're going to bring in technology to help us scale, and then we will create criteria for locality, cultural differences, and then we can bring that into the model framework in validation, so that now your team, you and John, as you travel outside of Boone, like if what you're going to do in Boone, versus like in Orlando, Florida, there's going to be some difference, nuanced things, but we can create line items in the model for the nuances so that it triggers you based on your experience. Like, oh, now we're in swampy area, or now we're in a super high humidity area. So it's going to change like possibly some of the facade elements. I guarantee you, like on the technical side, it's going to change where the vapor barrier is in the building, and the vapor barrier is going to change the performance of like the mechanical systems. So if you're in a situation where you've got times of the year where you can just use outside air, versus like if we were in Phoenix, Arizona, where you're running air conditioning like 80% of the year, those types of things are going to be different systems, and that's nuance enough. But in your model, you can see like, oh, here's the line because I'm in this geography. Now we're paying 15% more on utility systems, versus where we've got 4 seasons and there's a good time of the year where we can just open the windows or just bring outside air in from the outside. Right. So all those processes I'll bring in what I call validation. And then from validation, some people just call it pre-construction, which is before shovel. But then pre-construction more typically is estimating, where we're just pricing what the architect's already drawn. But in the process I'm describing, it's the opposite of what people do. I'm Your architect is at the table with us, and I'm telling the architect your budget number, or you're telling them, right? We're sharing how much money you have. And so we're using cost as an input to their design instead of just you and John's wild idea. Because you and John's wild
Yeah.
idea, the architect can solve that problem. They could create a one-story $1 billion solution, right? And architects listening to me, you know that you could. If I told you that money was no object, you could create a $1 billion, like 10,000 square foot hotel. But John and Adam would never make any money on that. They're never going to make the ROI back in their lifetime, right? So we've got to use cost as an input. And then we've got to give the architect feedback at key points as they're making decisions, just like I did with this big menu. And I said, oh, you don't like chicken? I took all the chicken dishes off. We have to do the same type of process with the design team. Let's not get mad at the designers when they design something we can't afford. Like that only happens when we don't tell them what we could afford.
Yeah. I've been involved in I got some architect friends that watch this, and I know they're laughing because we've uh, experienced a wide variety of projects together. One of which was can describe as what you just described as putting the cart before the horse, or whatever that the sound bite might be, by saying we're not really sure what we want to do, but let's brainstorm. And then you end up just brainstorming it for the next 3 months, and without any kind of direction. So I had a vision in my head there as listening to you, kind of like an upside down, might be wrong, an upside down pyramid as it relates to um, the impact of decisions, right? So the top of the upside down triangle or pyramid is this validation period where, like, don't rush through it.
Yeah.
Gather in your experts, gather in your people during this brainstorming session, because very quickly they might say, John says, I think that we can do this for $20 million, 100 hotel rooms and $200,000 per room. No doubt, because I just did this 3 or 4 times before, and
Right.
that's about what it came at. Well, with all those different factors coming in during that validation period, it might be a lot more, it might be a lot less. It might change your entire concept in that what you are gonna be using for the highest and best use of that space, and so, a hotel might not work there because you thought it was going to work there.
Yeah.
That's happened to me before too, where it was looked absolutely perfect in everyone's mind that hospitality and hotel and restaurant and event space was going to work at that particular site. But you know what it is now? It's actually a hospital. And I'm talking about a site here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area.
Just triggered me.
Um,
There's a hospital project. I'm talking to a friend of mine on in validation. We're under an NDA, but the city is trying to force them to put all that stuff you just described on the first level of a multi-story hospital, and it's creating just a nightmare for the hospital. It's like we're trying to
mm,
intake patients, and the city's trying to. We don't really know what the city's trying to do. Like they're just like spitballing stuff.
yeah,
This is the type of stuff
that's an asset and a liability, right?
people have to take that into account. Like if if you've been to a hospital space and you see people, the type of people coming in, like if you're a restaurateur, you don't want people that need emergency care coming to the same proximity to your venue, because it's going to scare your customers away. I mean, it's just inevitable. And like, and the city, and they're thinking with good intentions, but until you see it, like you got to describe it. That's not something where I would say, like, let's get in the car, let's go drive it, let's go look and stand in front of a hospital entrance for 10 minutes. Now let's go to a restaurant, stand in front of that hospital, and tell me why you think it can or can't work.
With that mindset of just watching and learning and observing and yeah, that's where a lot of creativity comes.
I would take
And,
your pyramid that you said, like, let me see, like pyramid, like this type of shape, right? I'd say think
mhm,
of it like a funnel. It's like a funnel. When you're at the top of the funnel, anything can come in, but as you narrow down,
that's good.
to let stuff go like a funnel, and then you're just going to control the flow. And that's the key thing. So the faster in the EBFC show, the F is, for construction, but it also means faster and cheaper. It's the
Mhm,
original, it's an old industrial engineering catchphrase from Shingeo Shingo: easier, better, faster, cheaper. So to get things faster, it's like letting the right things happen at the right time, not too early. Anytime you let work happen earlier than it should, you're creating excess inventory. And now you have to deal with all that extra work you let pile up, and it slows down your throughput rate. So, like every grouping of people, when they come together at them, they have a speed. I would just consider it their default speed, the fastest they can go based on the processes that they do. But if we allow certain people in this group of people to make more stuff, it chokeholds what can actually get through the system, and it slows everything down. Every project that's like having
mhm.
schedule issues has always a combination of unchecked overproduction of either design, information, or material things happening, or it has a chokehold on information sharing. And so there's not enough information sharing for people to make the right decisions. It's always a combination of those two things. I don't even know if there's a third category yet, because I see these two things happening so often that it's if you fix one or both of those, you can often double the speed at which you can design and build.
And, it is like a faucet, like you said,
Yes.
control. Yeah, you can, it's, the alignment of interests, with stakeholders, and, uh, doesn't necessarily need to have one individual in charge, but there needs to be one vision, of, ultimate decision making, for when you're in that funnel, right?
Yep.
Um, we did I have a general perspective on, uh, in life. I actually believe that hotels are people. I know they're buildings, duh,
Yeah. I
but
like that.
I do think I look at hotels as being they have personalities, they have
Yeah.
behaviors, and, I've been trained, too many times in behavioral interviewing where, um, the philosophy when you're interviewing someone, you ask them questions like, um, "Tell me about a time, that you did blank," and it's the kind of behavior that you wanna see repeated, and the philosophy is that past behaviors predict future performance. And a hotel is very similar. A hotel has a history. A hotel has it was nothing existed, and then there was labor, and great thought, and a lot of love and a lot of vision, and then it was born, and it goes through phases: toddler, adolescence, and adult, and into twilight. Um, the and also a lot of beauty happens inside of a hotel the way that it does with a human being, but also tragedy, right? Tragedy does happen. Sometimes it happens with no notice, and sometimes it happens with no, you know, no one to blame. It just happens. And so, but it's not the reason not to do it, right? So the better to have loved and lost than to not have loved at all, as I think Lord Tennyson said. Um, I might be wrong in who said it, but,
Yeah.
I think it's
It's
beautiful, and
yeah,
so
it's out there now.
it's out there, man, yeah. It's also similar to, we can start to wrap up here in just a little bit, but you mentioned the chokehold on processes and these big visions that people have. It does remind me of Field of Dreams when they say, "Build it and they will come." Um,
I've
there's
heard
one there
many a client say that, Adam, and they built it and the revenue never shows up.
What are you left with? A bunch of cornfield, right? That's what they
Exactly.
Um, yeah, it's a, when those stakeholders come together, you do have different personalities, you have different um, interests, but when there is one vision, and that is my big learning point here from talking with you and listening to you is that validation period. Um, we often call it the brainstorming period, where if the to frame up a meeting, if it's an hour long meeting or a day long meeting, if the frame of that meeting has a certain set of rules to say, we are not in execution mode right now, we are not in feasibility mode, we are in brainstorming mode, and we're going to just blur a bunch of ideas, and we're going to pick it. People say throw pasta at the wall or a dart. War. I'm mixing metaphors, but
Yeah.
it's when those ideas happen, and then that vision is created. And even after that initial vision is created, I'm learning by listening to you is that you need to validate it, to make sure that that vision is at the right time, at the right place, and the right people are involved, and everything starts to make sense. And so, the I did an episode about the impossible, that the impossible is possible in hotels, and that was buying a hotel. And I used Forrest Gump characters as a backdrop, and I said that Jenny and Bubba it was their dream to buy a hotel themselves. And um, I would encourage others to watch and listen for that, because it's the same way of thinking, and it's all over our website at Hospiamo. Felipe, and it says that you can do the impossible. So don't think that you can't. If you see that site and you just have a vision, it's very possible, as long as you do have the people with you, and you have these conversations, and you're very open. And when you throw in there, and I would point out that I uh, identify with what you said about using technology as a supplement, right? We sometimes think that we need to have some sort of technology in the front to say, I want to do the impossible. I want to build my own hotel. I want to buy my own hotel, and I have no money, or I don't live in the area where I think it should be, or something like that. If there, I don't think there's any. If you look at it from technology first, it might put you in a different direction. If you look at it from doing exactly what you and I are doing right now, by having a conversation, asking really cool questions, and learning, and staying in touch, and uh, talking about potentially difficult conversations, like you mentioned first about mental health, even like, do I even know anybody in the area that wants to work at a hotel like this? So there's just wonderful conversations, and that's really the point of our show, Felipe, is to have these conversations, and so that the people that I'm connected with in the hotel industry, can learn from people like you, that technically might be initially worlds colliding, but that's where the beauty happens. I really think I think it is, by having these conversations and inviting these different views. So the other thing that I learned, that I wrote down and circled, I'm visual also. I got my own little whiteboard here. Is
Nice.
your the way to ask questions during a podcast with your little microphone in there, so to get the voice messages. So I'm going to hit you up for that kind of advice. Felipe, we can finish up. Any more words of wisdom that you wanted to share? What's next for you? Is there anything that you're really excited about that you wanted to share?
I mean, I love this platform, this ability to talk and have conversations like this, Adam. Like, when we got together, we had no idea where we were going to go, and Adam and I were talking before the show started about different guests and just some variation that we deal with. And one of the things that I wanted to mention then that just I didn't, but I'll mention it now, is like in everything we do, there's some variation, and some people are, and I've got friends and that are really about like, let's standardize and make things better, but don't over standardize. Like, leave some space. Like Adam and I left space to have this conversation for you to get some value, and I hope that the things that I shared bring value to your day and the type of work you're going to do. But we didn't over script it, right? We left room for where is this going to go? And like I mentioned AI, and we never went back to AI in this conversation, but it was a great talk. And like I would just say, like with that and with anything that we mentioned, get curious, search the things out, and then just like Matt told Adam, like just talk to Felipe, you'll be good. And we did. So hit me up on my socials, my phone number's there, emails there, uh, direct message me. Like Adam is proof. Like if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
contact me, I will talk to you.
It's true. Yeah, I often say that too. It's like there's probably about 1,000,000 people that have my cell phone, and I've said to people, since even going back to 20 plus years ago when I was a general manager at one hotel, I would give 'em my cell phone number when cell phones were first invented, and they're like, "What are you doing giving your cell phone number to guests?" And I just gave it away. Well, you know how many call me? Like, hardly ever. And so I just wish that they would, and, this is proof that we can connect and stay connected, and, um, man, you're a busy guy, and you're on the other side of the continent. You got a lot going on, so I really wanna extend my appreciation to you for spending, over an hour here talking with me and, teaching me, and also all the people that we, that come watch and on the loop that we have it on. It gets shared a lot. So, sincerely, thank you for spending the time, Felipe, and we're gonna do this again. Maybe we'll talk about one of those 10 or 12 other things that we didn't get a chance to talk about today. So, thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you. Love being here.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.